Hey, CBC. Happy Wednesday to you. I look forward, middle school, to seeing you in a little bit. For me, like more than 24 hours at this point, but hopefully soon for you because maybe you'll watch this right before we have our Zoom meeting, which is great. It's been a little bit, hadn't it? It's been a little while since I've seen you. We have a good bit to talk about in chapter 10. So I'm going to try to dive in and move quickly. But I want to preface by saying again that we're skimming over so much. And if you really want to get a lot out of these chapters, I really encourage you to take time on your own to read it and take time to read it with your family. With someone close to you that loves the Lord, whether they're blood kin to you or otherwise, read it in community and conversation with other people. And I'd like you to really do some investigation with these passages. In 1 Corinthians, we're now getting to the point, Paul's kind of laid out his theology, his belief about God, his teaching about who God is in the beginning, and we're getting into specific issues that are happening in the church in Corinth the past few chapters. In fact, now in chapter 10, Paul still goes back to chapter 8, where Sarah Beth shared about loving being better than knowledge, and this conflict that had been happening at the church with some of their members about idols and things. And then Daniel brings in this mission focus last week. We're going to continue those conversations today in chapter 10. But you need to read it in community, so do good investigation. If you're reading it right, you'll have lots of questions come up because there's lots of contextual pieces that are important. So call me. You know, most of you have my information by now, and if you don't have it yet, just reach out to us and we'll get it to you through the website. You can find my email on our church website. But let's have the conversation because otherwise you'll miss out. I'm skipping over so many things that we could get at. But here's what's basically going on right now in Corinth in chapter 10. Younger Christians, those baby Christians, and Christians who have been Christians for longer are struggling in knowing what's right with certain things. Some are saying, hey, if you eat meat that was sacrificed to an idol, you're doing something wrong. Others say, hey, it doesn't matter. That idol isn't real. So that meat is just meat. You can eat the meat and be fine. And Paul is saying, those people who say that you're fine to eat it are really correct. Like, we're free. We have a right to eat this meat. We have a right to kind of do what we want, knowing that it doesn't have a big consequence. But it violates the conscience of our brothers and sisters. They think it's bad. They think it's sinful. Maybe they're looking at it in a more simple way. Maybe they're looking at the situation without taking in gracefully or something along those lines. But we want to honor them by listening to what they're saying and by respecting what they say. So Paul would be, if this person is offended by me eating meat that was sacrificed to an idol, even though I know it's okay, I'm going to choose to not, for the sake of being unified with that person, of loving that person, of honoring that person above myself. If it's something that doesn't really matter, then we can go to the opinion of the person who has the strongest opinion. Right? If it doesn't really matter, then let's not pick a battle over something that's insignificant, is kind of Paul's thinking, I think. I think that's a good way to characterize it. In 31, he ends this whole chapter with this set of verses. In chapter 10, verse 31. So, if you eat or drink, or whatever you do, do it to the glory of God. Give no offense to Jews who are now Christians, or Greeks who are now Christians, or to the church of God, just as I try to please everyone in everything I do, don't seek your own advantage. Seek that of the many, that they may be saved. Be imitators of me as I imitate Christ. Okay? Now, he's saying, and my version literally reads it this way, try to please everyone. Now, we remember Galatians chapter 1, when Paul says, if I were trying to please people and not please God, I wouldn't be a servant of Christ. Right? Something along those lines he says in Galatians 1. So we know that Paul's not saying just do what other people want all the time. That's not what he means here. But what he is saying is, if it ultimately doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, then just show respect for your brothers and sisters in the church. Now, we don't have to worry too much about food sacrificed to idols that I know of. I don't know what kind of preparation goes into your meals all the time. We don't really have to worry about that. But we do have some issues in our churches, in our lives, that people get really passionate about that aren't necessarily an essential issue. Now notice I didn't say they're unimportant. They are important because they matter to some of our brothers and sisters. Let me list off a few examples. Running in church. Especially running at certain times in church. Now, you and I understand that the church building is nothing special. It's mortar and concrete and drywall, just like any other building. But if we have a brother or sister in our congregation that really, really thinks we should respect the space by not running, well, because it doesn't really matter to me, because it's not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things, I should honor that person who does have a big opinion on it. And maybe eventually their opinion will change, and hey, let's race up and down the halls. But no, you see my point. We go to them. We honor them. What about hats in church? I don't really care if you wear a ball cap. Next week we'll be talking about head coverings. It's going to be a really, really fun lesson, I'm sure. But there are people in our congregations that might really be uncomfortable with us wearing a hat in at church. So because it's a big deal to them, not necessarily to me maybe, then okay, I'll take off my hat if I go into the building. I don't wear hats, so this is a hypothetical, but you know. What about music choice? Now this goes every which direction, right? The type of music we're playing, the notes on a page that we're playing, the rhythm or instruments used in the music we lead with does not matter at all. Traditional, modern, loud, quiet, piano, a cappella, whatever. It doesn't matter. If we want to do traditional biblical worship, we probably should just pull out a harp and have just that. I mean, it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but we know that worship style is really, really important for people, whether they're in the sanctuary or in the gathering place or at a different congregation altogether who has completely different traditions. And so we need to find ways that we can honor each other by letting people have what they feel's most important and letting people's needs be met by what's most important. These are a few little simple examples. But what I hope you can get out of this lesson for tonight is the message of hold what's most important as most important. And let little battles, don't let them take your attention and energy. And really the most important, sticking with the message of Paul, and here's the key point of his passage here, is that the power of the cross is that Jesus makes us all level just below him, right? That Jesus gives himself freely to each of us, and that all of us need him with an equal amount of desperation, right? We're all, the ground's level at the foot of the cross. We're all in the same playing field. But he steps down and saves us. That's important. That's key. We can't honor a different belief than that. We have to speak that truth. But when it comes to many, many, many of the things that we get up in arms about, we can let other people have their way. It doesn't really matter that we have our way. Ooh, that's convicting for me because I'm passionate about everything. I'm passionate about what color the carpet is because it could be representative of, I've got to let a lot of that go because it doesn't ultimately matter. But when we're unified, right, a key message of 1 Corinthians, when we're unified, we can be true missionaries. We give the world an example of something they want to pursue, they want to come after. And Paul says right in the beginning of this chapter, it's our instruction that the Scripture is written for. This is verse 11. Because on us the end of ages has come. If that was true for Paul, that's certainly true for us. So we must come together to be a great example of the love in Jesus, right? Thinking back to a couple years ago for some of you, for our 8th and 7th graders, the world will know that we're his disciples by our love for one another. We let the little battles go. We let little things go to come together to reach out to a world that desperately needs that love and unity, but even more importantly, that essential truth that is worth fighting for, that Jesus has given himself freely to all of us equally. Okay, sorry, went way over what I hoped to, but there's so much in here. There's so much. Dive in. If you're getting stir crazy, you need to get into the Scripture. If you're stressed and have too much going on and can't keep track of all your schoolwork and this and that, you need to get into the Scripture. Whatever situation you're in, open it up, read it with us. Next week we'll do chapter 11. I look forward to seeing you, hopefully in your time, in just a bit. And I love you, and I continue to miss you very much. All right, bye.